is my hope that this exercise will receive the usual kind, expeditious consideration of the distinguished Senate. Please accept, Mr. Senate President, the assurances of my highest regards. You are sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari.
13 ministers return while 18 are dropped as President Buhari sends ministerial list to Senate.
I want to assure you that we shall remain committed to creating an inclusive and diversified economy that provides jobs, opportunities for all Nigerians, regardless of tribe, religion, or politics.
President Buhari vows to revive moribund textile industry, directs patronage of local textiles.
We will do everything that is permissible under the law to keep Nigerians safe.
54 Shiite members in police net over violent protests that killed Deputy Commissioner of Police and others.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the Shiite movement and national security.
Now, Nigeria is a secular country which guarantees the religious rights of all citizens. Indeed, people are free to practice their faith inasmuch as it is conducted within the laws and does not infringe, I repeat, infringe on the rights of others.
That's right, Rhoda. Now, the Nigerian Constitution is also very clear about the right of citizens to assemble and demonstrate to ventilate their grievances against any issue, as long as they, again, stay within the bounds of the law.
And that's quite true, Kingsley. All this that we're talking about this morning is a preamble to what we're discussing today. This is just kind of to lay foundation for our discussion today, which is the growing menace of violent demonstrations by members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, otherwise known as the Shiites.
Well, Rhoda, the Nigerians and indeed the government have continued to be worried about the unruly conduct of members of the group who insist that they are fighting for the release of their leader, Sheikh al-Zakzaki, who is currently undergoing trial at a high court in Kaduna.
Now, Kingsley, you could recall that actually this group has constantly clashed with law enforcement agencies as they embark on violent demonstrations or processions, whatever they call them. And if you can remember the Zuba clash, that was one of them. Just recently, we had the invasion of the National Assembly. And on Monday here, we had a clash at the Federal Secretariat. And just yesterday, there was another one at the Banex Plaza. That's Wuse too. And in all of these that has happened on Monday, actually, a deputy commissioner of police and a trainee reporter who is also a 7-youth copper both of them were killed, and several other people.
Well, that's right, Rhoda. Very, very sad development there. Now, the group, that's to say the Shiite movement, has, of course, been associated with other matters relating to the disruption of public order, especially in states where they conduct their processions. And those states include Kaduna. In fact, the last incident that led to the arrest of Zakzaki took place in Zaria in 2015. And many who have experienced their processions say it's usually a very terrible experience, which needed to be checked.
The encounter with the Chief of Army Staff, which led to the eventual arrest of their leader, is public knowledge. But the concern is that the penchant for violent expression has not ceased among members of the group who seek the release of their leader.
Now, many are concerned that this development needs to be tackled decisively in order to avoid its degeneration into another insurgency. Now, this is more so as members of the group have continued to denounce the Nigerian government, which they say they do not recognize. Now, what are the implications of the activities of the Shiite movement on Nigeria's national security?
Very important questions you've raised here, Kingsley. And other questions to raise will include that what should security agencies do to be ahead of these demonstrations, which have continued to graduate into violence? What can the public and government do to support security personnel in dealing with the situation?
Well, Rhoda, those questions are among the many we shall raise later on with our guests in the conversation segment on the program. It's on that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in again to Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are right here in Abuja. That's our headquarters studios. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Rhoda Anona. We thank you for being with us this morning. We're live from Nigeria's capital city, just as Kingsley has indicated. As always, on the program, we have our complimentary segments, and that will be brought to you in the course of the program. We'll have a newspaper review, we'll have business, we have sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But as always, the news comes first. And Lydia Odigio, she is here with us this morning to give us highlights of the news. Lydia, it's good to see you looking beautiful in blue and yellow this morning. Good morning.
You are too. Good morning, Nigerians, and welcome to the news. Following the submission of the list of ministers by President Muhammadu Buhari, the Senate is to commence the screening of ministerial nominees today. This followed the transmission of 43 names from President Muhammadu Buhari in accordance with Section 147, subsections 2 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended.
This exercise will receive the usual kind, expeditious consideration of the distinguished Senate. Please accept, Mr. Senate President, the assurances of my highest regards. You are sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari.
The Bureau of Public Procurement has been directed to ensure that all uniformed institutions of the federal government patronize locally produced garments as a deliberate attempt towards revitalizing the nation's textile industry. President Muhammadu Buhari, who gave the directive while granting audience to the National Union of Textile, Garment and Tailoring Workers of Nigeria, said his administration will not allow the country to continue exporting jobs at the expense of its citizens.
Made the effort in changing the narrative of textile from that of closures to a bold new initiative to revive the industry back to the good old days.
One can just imagine the jobs we will create in the sector when the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Air Force, the police, customs, immigration, Federal Road Safety Corps, NYSC, and many more fully patronize our local industries.
Now to security matters. Over 50 suspects are currently in police custody following Monday's violent protest by members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, which left a senior police officer and a Channels television reporter dead. Force Public Relations Officer Frank Umba, speaking exclusively to the NTA, says the suspects are already being interrogated and will be prosecuted.
The police have already thrown a cordon around the city, and we will do everything that is permissible under the law.
Meanwhile, the National Youth Service Corps says the security and welfare of Corps members will not be compromised. Director General of the NYSC, Brigadier General Shuaibu Ibrahim, reaffirms this during a visit to a Corps member, Suleiman Aliyu, serving with leadership newspapers, who sustained injuries as a result of a stray bullet at the National Hospital. The NYSC boss also visited the morgue where the body of Precious Owolabi was kept. Owolabi was serving with Channels Television.
And Corps members, I want to commiserate and condole the family of the deceased that his service to our country will not be in vain, and that may his soul rest in perfect peace.
The House of Representatives has set up an ad hoc committee to interface with the executive arm of government and heads of security agencies in order to devise new strategies towards tackling the violent protests by the Islamic Movement of Nigeria. The resolution followed a motion of urgent public importance by Representative Mohammed Bello from Kano State on the need to contain the extremism by the Shiite group.
To proscribe Islamic Movement of Nigeria or declare their assembly unlawful in Nigeria, the group may likely arm itself and turn a deadly group.
We need to nip these things in the bud. We need to step away from rhetorics.
With adequate policing, the Shiites, that congregation of yesterday, cannot come together and do what they do without them being...
I don't even subscribe to the idea of proscribing them. It's a registered organization, but as a registered organization operating under a democratic polity, we must be able to operate by the rules.
Ad hoc committee to interface with the executive on the security issues raised. Honorable Ado Dogwa will chair. Honorable Undidi Elumelu, Honorable Mohamed Shehu, Honorable Ade Adiogun, Honorable Idu Igariwe, Honorable Victor Nwokolo, Honorable Makama Ibrahim Misal.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Rhoda and Kingsley after this break. Good morning.
Around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 4 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
Introducing new Always Cotton Soft. Its unique top sheet is as soft as cotton and gentle to your skin, offering you comfortable protection as you go about your day. New Always Cotton Soft, available in long and extra long for 250 Naira only.
NTA Television College Jos announces admissions into 2-year diploma programs in film and television production, television engineering, and broadcast journalism. The sale of forms will commence on the 13th of May and run through 30th July 2019. Admission forms can be obtained from all marketing offices, NTA state capital stations, zonal centers, or at the office of the academic secretary, NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos.
On payment of a non-refundable fee of 7,500 Naira in bank draft in favor of NTA TV College. Applicants can also obtain the forms through the NTA TV College portal at www.ntatvc.edu.nj.
Applicants are required to possess 5 credits in GCE or SSCE in relevant areas of study in not more than 2 sittings, including English and mathematics. All properly completed forms attached with photocopies of credentials must be submitted on or before 30th July 2019. For further inquiries, please visit our website at ntatvc.com or call 0803-3144-383.
NTA TV College, training you to be the best you want to be.
Registrar, Announcer.
The Aerial Assurance Challenge.
Oh, thank you. But what assurance can you give our daughter?
Everything. With the new look Ariel, I can even do the laundry.
Prove it then.
Okay. Let's make this stain even tougher. Now, let's wash the cloth with your detergent and with new look Ariel. Do you believe me now?
Ariel, now in a new look pack.
Hi, welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the NTA. Time for us now to take some business stories. With the Central Bank of Nigeria retaining the monetary policy rate as the Nigeria Customs Service, it's also making a pledge to further secure the country's borders. Our correspondent Kunle Adeyeye has details of the stories.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria left the rate unaltered, which still stands at 13.5%. The 11 members in attendance unanimously agreed to retain the rate. Besides the monetary policy rate retained at 13.5%, the cash reserve ratio is now held at 22.5%. The committee premised its decision on global economic growth and Nigeria's inflation figure, which is at 11.22%.
That while loosening could increase money supply, stimulate aggregate demand, and strengthen domestic production, the economy could be awash with excess liquidity, especially if loosening drives growth in consumer credit without commensurate adjustment in aggregate output.
In another development, Nigeria Customs Service has pledged to be more alive to its responsibilities at the nation's borders following Nigeria's signing of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Comptroller General of the Nigeria Customs Service, Amid Ali, said the aim is to protect the interest of those involved.
Customs responsibility is to ensure that every good that is coming, that we enjoy that duty-free designed by the protocol, must have originated from a member state. That's very critical.
And the equities market on Tuesday closed on a positive note as Nigeria's stock exchange or share index appreciated by 1.21% to close at 28,144.87 points as against 0.40% depreciation recorded previously. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
All right, you're welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Time now for us to take a review of the stories that made headlines on today's papers. Newspaper review is up next.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Atoyebe is with us on the studios this morning. Bayo, morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, brother.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo.
Thank you.
Okay, the papers we have this morning, obviously the lead story is virtually the same, although couched differently. For the Daily Trust newspaper, it says Senate begins screening of ministerial nominees today with two riders. Senators postpone recess for exercise. And list on aspiring. That's according to PDP, that's the minority party. And you have on the front page of the photograph there, the front page, the photos of some of the ministerial nominees. You have 7 of them are women, and right on the front top row of the passport photographs being displayed there. So Senate begins screening of ministerial nominees today, according to Daily Trust. For the Nigerian pilot, it says ministerial list at last. Buhari retains 12, appoints 31 new cabinet members. Akpabio, Silva, Akume, Aregbesola, and Mamora make lists. The Senate begins screening of nominees today, suspends recess.
All right, let's now move over to the Daily Sun. On the front page of the Daily Sun, just beside the nameplate, it says, "Fear and panic in Abuja, Shiites strike again." That's a story that's on page 6 of the Daily Sun. And just as Kingsley indicated just now, almost all the papers have a same lead story, but they've been couched differently. It says, as Buhari sends name of ministerial nominees to Senate, finally the lists. And it has names of some of the ministers ministers that have been nominated. That the nominees, you have Akpabi, you have Amechi, you have Akume, Aregbesola, Malami, Udoma, Kachuku and Dalong lose out. Mixed reactions. The Senate begins screening today. So Dambaza, Udoma, and Nelama, Dalong, Kachuku lose out. Senate begins screening today. That's the lead story for the Daily Sun. And the picture story there is that of some of the nominees. Just below the picture story, let's move very quickly. You have there, Central Bank of Nigeria to deny milk importers forex licenses, 3 new banks. That's a story that's on page 2. Okay. U.S. announces visa restriction to Nigerians undermining democracy linked to violence, election violence. That's on page 42. All right, Bayo, let's begin with the lead story, of course, and that's the story that's trending on all the papers this morning, the ministerial list. Let's get your take on that.
The list of 43 nominees has been received at the Senate. The Senate President read this to members of the Senate yesterday after a brief closed-door session. The nominations, according to Section 147(2) of the 1999 Constitution. Daily Trust indicate that 17 among the last set did not make the list, including some that had always been dubbed or supposed to be kitchen cabinet members. This is which the president had kept close to his chest is coming in 58 days after inauguration. In 2015, the ministerial list hit the National Assembly on 13th of October 2015. Some states have 2 nominees, and there are 6 states, which include Anambra, Bauchi, Edo, Kano, and Kwara. Others are, I think it's Lagos, like it's the 6th one. The Federal Capital Territory doesn't seem to have a nominee. And among the nominees, there are 7 female nominees, and I'm sure Rhoda will be interested about the percentage of affirmative action. That is, if you look at the 43, it's 16.2% of the 43 nominees. That's the affirmative action. There are indications that the Senate has rescheduled its recess that it was due for this week to make room for the screening of the ministers. Meanwhile, the President has warned protecting members of the Shiite group that they should not test the will of government. He reacted to killing of the Deputy Commissioner of Police and a youth corps member and condoled the police and the family of the corps member. The federal government, he said, might be forced to act with maximum force to defend the interest of majority of Nigerians. A statement signed by the senior special advisor to the president, Mr. Femi Adesina, quotes the president as saying, "Let nobody or group doubt the test or our will to act in the higher interest of our citizens." The protesters were dispersed even yesterday when they came out at Banex Plaza, and there are indications of possible fatalities when they came out again yesterday.
All right, Bayo, just before we return to the Shiite story, of course, is the principal item for our discussion later on in the program. But back to the ministerial nominees, the list of which was read on the floor of the Senate yesterday. We were talking about some states having 2 nominees. That is in accordance with the geopolitical zones. Geopolitical zones. If you yes, 6 of them. There are 6 geopolitical zones. Of course, if you picked an extra candidate, an extra nominee from one zone, that nominee would obviously come from a state, such as you have with Anambra in the southeast, Edo in the south-south, Lagos. You also have that, and I believe the others. If there are any omissions, of course, all of those ones will be taken care of. What appears to be the offering is that with the number of ministerial nominees, if the president gets all of them approved by the Senate, or assuming there are any rejections and then there are replacements, one should expect on the face of it that the mega ministry that you had, power, works, and housing will be dismantled. Yes. There's no doubt about that. So it's obvious that that's likely to take place. It's also fairly likely, I'm just speculating on the basis of what we'll find, that it's subsuming aviation under transport, because you had a Minister of State for aviation, and then you also had Minister of Transport, whose hands are full, taking care of railways and maritime, that there might also be a split. There was always a split in the past of getting a substantive Minister of Aviation, Hade Sirika. His name is back on the list as one of the nominees to be cleared. So I'm sure that it will be interesting, how the screening exercise would go. Now, it also tells you that perhaps there has been some back-channel consultation. If the Senate says that the screening will begin today, if you're going to screen a nominee today, the nominee would have been put on notice. Yes. There are requirements for you. You would be required, of course, to present your resume, yes, and have them in a specified number of copies, usually for the number of senators, that's 109, and other extra copies you'll prepare for the clerical staff of the National Assembly. So if the list got there yesterday, I mean, if the list got there and it was ready yesterday, you didn't put me on notice, and I'm supposed to appear for screening today, how am I supposed to prepare myself? I'm not on the list, by the way. I'm just saying that SRC bio was on the list. So there's been some back channel, communication, with regard to those persons who were nominated. So the positive effect has also been shown. The stock market has tended to have responded positively to this, and when the portfolios then get to be assigned, we'll also see how the capital market will respond. Yeah.
In fact, one of the indication that's obvious is the area of aviation. You will recall that there is a bold initiative to have Air Nigeria and to have Nigerian Airline Bank, and that, I think, is obvious to infer from that new list. The other area of concern is the report about a Boeing 737-300 that crash-landed in Lagos yesterday. It crash-landed at Murtala Mohammed Airport. The pilot had actually noticed a sudden weather change on approach to the runway, and so she smartly called the control tower and asked for the International Runway 18, which is longer and wider. The aircraft nose will collapse upon forceful landing, but it rolled to the runway exit. All the 133 passengers and 6 crew disembarked safely through the passenger door. Only minor injuries were reported to the Accident Investigation Bureau, AIB. In fact, the airline has commended the pilot for her initiative.
She's a lady.
Yes, for her initiative.
A lot of people who flew that flight yesterday actually commended her effort. But then one thing that everybody kept saying was the response time to the evacuation. As at the time the plane landed, it took about 50 to 52 minutes before rescue or operations came to evacuate them from that place, which was a long time. And the complaint was, if the plane was ablaze or something was happening, then only God knows what would have happened.
Well, you see, in instances of emergency landing, all the emergency services, fire alarm, everybody is placed on alert. The moment the pilot gives indications to the airports that there is an emergency, everybody is placed on alert. So the moment the aircraft rolled to safety, all the fire services, emergency have all been there, and they must make sure that there is no fire and they're safe before they open the passenger door for them to evacuate. But however, thanks to Providence, everybody is fine.
Bayo, it's the pilots needs to be commended, as has been widely acknowledged and as such applauded. Bad weather, can occasion anything, because the runway, of course, was wet. You could see that, and the pilot had noticed that there was a sudden weather change, and then she needed to take that decision. And luckily, there wasn't traffic on that particular runway at the material time that she landed. But the response time, as Rhoda has pointed out, and as we have discussed, you recall just a few days ago there was the incident of a stray walker into the tarmac, who prevented an asthma aircraft from taking off, and it took the security agencies quite a while to respond to that particular incident. Now, where were the emergency services at the material time? If the pilot had communicated with the control tower to say that this was what I was going to do, but of course the pilot might not have known whether the aircraft was going to lose a wheel or otherwise. What was then required would be for the emergency services to be at alert and say, look, within a couple of minutes, you are right there at the spot, and then 15 minutes. Probably somebody was having a breakfast somewhere or having lunch somewhere, and then they just forgot to do what is required. 15 minutes is enough time for you to fly from Lagos to Abuja. 15 minutes.
Yes. That's quite a long.
All right.
All right, Bye. Let's quickly take a look at. All right, would there be need for us to discuss that? That's what we're discussing today on the program. That's the Shiite movement, issue of security.
There are other stories from the Daily Trust as well as Nigerian Pilot. But I'll just go through them very quickly. Nigerian Pilot and the Daily Trust. Daily Trust said, below the nameplate of Daily Trust newspaper, Ghanaian traders close shops owned by Nigerians in Accra That's on page 3. Military police detained GOC over stolen funds. That's page 3. CBN okays 3 new banks and to ban forex access to milk importers. And right at the foot of the front page of the paper, we talked about the Shiite already, and then the plane incident in Lagos. And PDP panel begins probe of Erie National Assembly members. And very quickly to Nigerian pilot below the nameplate, work begins on implementation of national tax policy. That's page 10. And no one with corruption case will escape. That's according to the acting chair of the EFCC, Magu. Details can be found on page 5. Then below the photograph, reps in storming session propose out-of-court settlement for federal government and Shiites. And Buhari burns Channels TV reporter, a deputy commissioner of police killed in Shiite police clash. And Senate demands state of Nigeria's refineries. Air Force loses 2 personnel in gun duel with bandits. Nigeria spends $1.5 billion to import milk. That's according to the CBN governor, Emefiele. And 8 persons perish in Enugu underground tank. Details on page 41.
Well, the other good story that's coming from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund has reviewed the growth forecast for Nigeria and by 0.3%. And so it's now forecasting that by 2019, Nigeria is expected to have a growth rate of 2.3%. This indication is an improvement over what it had forecast in July. In January, actually, the fund had, in fact, reduced its projection of Nigeria's growth rate by some percent. And in the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, who was a one-time mayor of London, has been elected the Conservative Party leader. He is expected to replace Theresa May as Prime Minister today. He won the votes by 92,000 of members of the Conservative Party to beat Jeremy Hunt.
All right, very quick, let's take a look at it, but just before I do that, it's so sad to know that, Nigerians are being still treated this way in Accra, Ghana, where their shops are being locked. I know that just recently the MD of the Diaspora Commission, the chairman of the Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiore, were held a meeting with the Ghanaian High Commissioner, and we thought that all of these things would have been, dealt with. We hope that it's dealt with quickly. Now, let's take a very quick look at the editorial. That's editorial today is from the People's Daily, and it's on page 11, and it's on the limits of engineering failure. In the last 1 week, Nigeria has recorded 2 major incidents of building collapse. Both are deadly. The first occurred on July 15 at Delimi in Jos North Local Government area in Plateau State. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, gave the fatality figures at 14. 14 people died, including the owner of a 3-story building and his pregnant wife, and 4 people were injured. The second one was an uncompleted building meant for a hotel at Abraka in Ethiop East Council area. It came down on July 20. Several people were fed dead.
Yes,
what could be the problem? I know we've discussed this issue several times here on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I was at sea wondering what they meant by limits of engineering failure until when I read the editorial, and I realized that it's happened on the occurrence of building collapse. And within 2 weeks, we've had one at Jos and the one at Abraka in Delta that you have referred to. But the editorial has also reminded us that if we go back to the beginning of this year, remember, there was a 3-story building that collapsed in Lagos, and on the 2nd floor, there was even a school there, and several children were trapped, and many of them were killed. And it goes back to remind us about what happened in September 2014, when the guest house of the synagogue church also collapsed, in which 84 South Africans, 1 Zimbabwean, and 30 others were killed. And the editorial is challenging the Nigerian Building Road Research Institute, the Council for the Registration of Engineering, and Building Collapse Prevention Guild to do something critically, and also not only just do something, but to make an example of those who own buildings that collapse, especially if it is their fault that those buildings collapse. We must begin to set examples, and people must be held accountable for their carelessness when buildings collapse. In fact, one of the positive indications with the recent building collapse in Jos was that the building that went under already had cracks, and there were laborers there busy trying to mend the cracks on the building before it gave in.
Yeah, it's a pharmacist who owned the building. Unfortunately, yes. I think it was reported to have also passed away in that incident.
Incidentally, he parked his car, walked into the building, and minutes later, the building came under, and he also one of the victims.
Victims, unfortunately. Well, thank you for being around today and for discussing. I'm sure that the ministerial list, one that will continue to excite a great deal of interest. I was just taking a look at some of the photographs again and then putting the names to the faces. Isha Patame, that's is the CEO or the DG of NITDA. He's been a guest with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, Adebayo, former governor of Ekiti State, is also there. Gosul Akpabio. Yes.
Festus Kayamo is also there.
Yeah, Festus Kayamo is there.
One of the questions that will be raised is where is the presence of the not too young to run?
Well, not too young to. Well, this time they're not running. This is not too young to serve.
All right, thank you very much, Maya, for being with us this morning. Hopefully, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. All right, thank you very much. We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll be looking at the Shiite movement and, of course, security issues surrounding that. Join us in just a moment.
Days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
To the outer framers, the hat tippers, the turtleneckers, the fringe goers, you don't need to hide anymore. Try Dettol Even Tone. It cleans and helps to reduce the appearance of blemishes caused by oil, dirt, and germs, giving your skin a healthy feel for an even better you. Dettol, be 100% sure.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you've just joined us, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Our focus this morning is on the Shiite movement and national security. Well, we have our guests already seated here in the studio to discuss this issue and to take it further. But first, we have put together a background report that would lay the foundation for this discussion. And it's been put together by correspondent Serafina Okon.
The Islamic movement of Nigeria, otherwise known as Shiites, was founded by Ibrahim el-Zakzaki during his university days, when he is said to have become so impressed with the 1979 Iranian Revolution that he wanted one in his home country, Nigeria. Records also shows that he became the leader of the Islamic movement and turned it into a vehicle for gaining followers in the 1990s. The movement, which is said to have previously known as the non-violent Islamic movement, has over the years lost that posture with many incidences of violence associated with its processions, where they have not only ignored lawful authority, but also oppressed other citizens as they go about their lawful businesses. Their disdain for the laws of Nigeria and constituted authority led to the confrontation with security agencies, including the Chief of Army Staff, which led to other confrontations. Subsequently, events led to the arrest and detention of their leader, El-Zazaki, who at the moment is undergoing trial at a Kaduna High Court. The Shiite leader is facing state charges, including culpable homicide and unlawful assembly. His supporters have continued to mount deadly protests, leading to loss of lives and property in various parts of the country. Some of these confrontations in the Federal Capital Territory alone include the cases of Zuba, Nyanya, National Assembly, and recently at the Federal Secretariat, where a senior police officer and a journalist was killed. Shiite supporters have also recorded casualties in these protests, demanding for the release of their leader. Nigerians and the government have continued to express worry that the movement's violent protests are becoming a threat to national security, which must be tackled immediately. In the wake of these violent clashes, what can be done by the security agencies to deal with this challenge? Are there other approaches to addressing this problem that will de-escalate the situation? What can authorities do to handle a group which does not recognize lawful authority? How can these protests take place without infringing on the rights of Nigerians and patrons for violence? These and more will be addressed by guests on Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Serafina Okun, for that background. We have three guests with us in the studios, regular guests whenever we're discussing security issues, to take this topic further. First, let's welcome Felix Waldo, a lawyer, and of course, retired Assistant Inspector General of Police. Retired AIG, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, would like to welcome Major General Ahmed Tijani Jibrin. He's also a former military director. He's a former director of military intelligence. General Jibrin, pleasure to have you with us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. And here too is Kabir Adamo, who is a security risk analyst. Kabir, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Pleasure is mine. Morning.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin our discussion this way. Kabiru, I'd like you to actually, first of all, lay the foundation by telling us what is, because as all of these have continued to happen in the last couple of days, and some people are not even aware of the genesis of this issue. So I'd like you to give us the genesis of this confrontation between the Shiites and the state. What is the bone of this contention?
So in a nutshell, the leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, which is the umbrella organization of Shia Muslims in Nigeria, there are two major divisions in Islam, Sunnis and Shiites. Now in Nigeria, the majority of Muslims, probably about 95%, are Sunnis, and then probably about 5% are Shias. Now within that 5%, some of them are members of this group, Islamic movement in Nigeria, which has its headquarters in Zaria. Now in December 2015, they were having an occasion, and the Chief of Army Staff and his convoy were driving near where they were having that occasion. They blocked the road, and there was an attempt for the Chief of Army Staff convoy to have access to that particular route, which was denied. And, you know, things happened. They snowballed into a confrontation between the two sides. And from that day till the next day, there appeared to be what looked like a security operation that led to the death of several of the members of that group and the arrest of the leader of the group, Sheikh El-Zakzaki, as well as his wife. They were moved to Abuja, and since then, he has been in detention. There were court proceedings at the federal level and at the state level for that incident and other associated incidents. Now, in 2016, there was a court order for him to be released, that Sheikh El-Zakzaki. The government did not honor that order. We're not sure why. But then another court suit was filed in Kaduna State, at the Kaduna State High Court. And as far as we know, that the hearing of that case had been adjourned for about 5 or 6 times already. The next hearing will be on the 29th of July. Now, within that period, the group has consistently maintained that the health of their leader is failing. Sometimes about 2 or 3 weeks back, we were told that the son of the leader of the group, Sheikh Zakzaki, had access to his father. And when he came out, he mentioned that his health is failing. So the new wave of protest we're seeing is as a result of that belief that the health of the leader is failing, that he's about to die. Their demand is for him to be released so that he can have access to medical care. In fact, they say they want to fly him abroad for medical treatment. On the part of the government, the executive arm of government, they have maintained that the case is not under their influence. It's the judicial arm of government, because, of course, there is a court sitting in Kaduna that is looking into the matter. So to answer your question directly, their demand is clear. Release our leader, because there was a federal court judgment asking for him to be released on bail. And then on the other hand, they're also saying that he has been denied his right for medical treatment.
I want to ask you very quickly, sorry, Kingsley, before 2015, did they have any were there series of confrontations with the state? Because what you just said was 2015, where they had that issue with the general. But before then, were there other issues?
Several issues. The history of the Islamic movement in Nigeria has had checkered altercations, if I use that word, with the Nigerian state, for a lot of reasons. The ideological underpinnings of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, to an extent, does not recognize the right of the state on certain actions. A good example is the request by the police for right to protest. The police has given its reason that if you want to engage in a protest action, you should seek clearance. We will guide you, we will protect you so that you do your protest. The group does not recognize that particular request by the police on the ground that it is not written anywhere in the Constitution. Apart from that, neighbors of the headquarters of this group in Zaria complain, and not just neighbors, they have what they call the annual trek and some other religious rites. Now, every time they're carrying out that protest, movement is obstructed on the road, sometimes from Kano to Zaria, or even from Bauchi to Zaria. Now, anyone traveling on the road during when they're doing that, and it's a 40-day activity, movement is obstructed consistently from, if I'm right, from around late November up till probably early January. So there has been a long history of, I would say, tension between them and their neighbors because of this type of actions. Apart from that, the underpinnings, the ideological underpinnings of the religion, of the perception of the religion, is to an extent different from the ideological underpinnings of the Sunni movement. So there is some tension between clerics that are of the Sunni belief, as well as clerics that are of the Shia belief. And like I said earlier on, the percentage of Sunni Muslims is better. So that type of tension has persisted beyond that. And then even before the 2015 confrontation, several instances of violent protestation has occurred. In fact, in one instance, leading to the death of the sons of the Sheikh himself. As far as, if I recall well, about 4 of his children have died from that kind of confrontation with the state. He himself, if I remember well, has been imprisoned about 4 times by different administration governments, both under the military and, if I'm right, under civilian administration. So there is a long history of confrontation between the state and this particular organization. As it were, the Kaduna state government has currently proscribed the group. So membership and association of the group in Kaduna state, and I think a few other northern states, is illegal as far as the law in those states are concerned.
All right, Kabir Adamu, thank you very much. Let's bring in the other 2 guests, AIG Felix Obuadu and General Jibrin. Let's start from the policing point of view. What is the record of the Shiite movement or the Islamic movement in Nigeria with regard to public order?
Well, thank you very much. I think our colleague there has laid a very beautiful foundation. Essentially, we should appreciate the fact that this Shiite movement, they've displayed a lot of lawlessness, disregard for law and order. I recall some years back, I think it was the Emir of Zaria, he was on his way to Kaduna. They blocked the highway and was forced to go back to Zaria. Now, when you do that kind of thing, you are denying other Nigerians their right to free movement, and it's not the best. And like Rael observed, there are just 5% of totality of Muslims in Nigeria. So how can just 5% be creating and compound all these problems for us? Over time, they've had this confrontation. What led to the current situation is when they had the effrontery and the guts to go to obstruct the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff. And I think that was, they had taken it too far. They had overstrayed their luck. And that's what took us to where they are today. So they've been extremely lawless. We've had that record of always disrupting public order. And when they do that, a lot of human activities are affected. No free movement, no, everything is virtually disrupted. Lives are threatened and all of the businesses are threatened, you know. So these are the records they've had, the police have had over time.
I just wonder, from the military perspective, the Islamic movement, of course, mushroomed, that's to say, it grew during the military reign. What was the disposition of the military to the group? Was it tolerance, accommodation, or otherwise, in terms of the response to their threats to public order or national security at the time?
Well, you know, the military, primarily, the responsibility is to protect the territorial integrity of the country against external aggression, and also to help the civil authority in case of internal security situation. In the past, the military had nothing to do with any religious organization, except when the government caused the military to take action like was done during the Metesini uprising and some other instances. So the military had no problem with the Shia movement. And we must put it on record that there are other Shia movements within this country. Particularly in Kaduna, I know there is one group led by Sheikh Hamza Lawal. Nobody has heard of any violence from them. Nobody has heard of any clash with the security agency or confrontation with the government. Nobody has heard that. So with the case of the IMN, the confrontation actually culminated into the prevention of the Chief Army Staff to move. That was where the military actually came in. But in the past, the military had nothing to do with them. So you know very well that as a Chief of Army Staff, you are moving in your own convoy on a federal road in the public, and then suddenly a group of people will stop and say you should not pass. And from what we saw on some video clips and testimonies thereafter, all entreaties to allow the chief pass, they refuse. So there is no how, if the Chief of Army Staff of Nigeria will be prevented from movement by people who illegally assemble and who feel that they have the powers to stop the Chief of Army Staff from moving, I think they are looking for trouble. There is nowhere in the world that can happen, nowhere in the world. So that's why the military had to use the minimum force required to allow the Chief of Army Staff to have his passage and go and attend his official function. So the military has no any particular relationship with any religious organization, because primarily their dealing is with the police and other security agencies. So that's why the Al-Zazak group have problems. And the problem is because they stopped the Chief of Army Staff from movement. Without that, I don't think there would have been any reason to have anything to do with them.
In terms of classification, the general impression out there, until you mentioned this now, was that you talk about Shiites, they are the ones that are ex-Zakzaki supporters, but it would appear that they also have sects within the Shiite sect. So who are the followers of ex-Zakzaki? They are the Islamic movement of Nigeria. And you mentioned another group that is also in Kaduna.
Yes.
What appears to be the modus operandi of that group? Do they also engage in the kind of things that we hear about the IMN?
No. You will not even know they exist, because they carry out their religious activities in their mosque and other sacred places they consider. You will be in Kaduna, you will never hear of it unless you really stay in Kaduna and you're interested in the Islamic movements in the city. You will not know they ever exist. Because the Shia as a group, as a religious body, is not supposed to be violent. Even the El Zazak group, if you recollect, in the past, nobody has heard of them committing any violent act. They carry out their procession on the street. And like was rightly pointed out by Kabir, that anybody that wants to carry out a large procession must seek the police permission to do so that the police will be there to monitor what is going on so that some hoodlums will not hijack their procession. So, but they do not believe, from what we are reading, in so many of some of their literature, they don't even believe in the Nigerian government.
I was going to, speak to that now. This is a group that doesn't recognize Nigeria as a country or as a state. How do you engage this basis, and how is this perceived in security circles? How do you perceive? I like you to start by speaking to that. I'd like Aliu Kabir to also respond to that. In a security circle, how do you respond to things like this when a group doesn't recognize Nigeria as a country or as a state, and it is within Nigeria?
Yeah, if you are within a country and you do not recognize the authority of the government, that means you do not also believe in the Constitution, because it is the Constitution that brings the government to existence. So if you do not believe in country's constitution, how can you live in such country? Even foreigners, when they come into your country, they practice, like there are many Indians, they are practicing their own religion, many Buddhists are practicing their own religion, and so on and so forth. You have to respect the law of the land. If you do not respect the law of the land, you do not have right to say that you will not have confrontation with the law enforcement agencies. That is why in the Nigerian situation, the IMN have constituted themselves into more or less a radical movement, rather than Islamic movement. Like the governor of Kaduna State pointed out, they are more or less seeking for political power. If they are trying to establish their entity, they are training militia. And there are occasions when these militia behave like military men. There are accusations that they are being trained to behave like military men. We have seen video clips where there were parades marching, just like you see on National Day, with the LZZ taking salute as the president of their own enclave. So there is nowhere in the world where you will exist in a country and you say you do not respect the law of the land. The simple law says that if you want to do a procession, seek for police permission, and they'll protect you. But you refuse to do that one. So there is no how they will not be having confrontation with the whether it is this government or any other government, there is no how they will not be having confrontation with the security agencies.
Ali Kabir.
Kabir Adamu.
Kabir Adamu.
So I think I would like to take a step back and then analyze it from two positions. The obvious position and then the likely latent position. What's the obvious position? If you speak to the members of the group, they will tell you, no, we're law-abiding, we recognize the Constitution. That's why we're working in government institutions, because of course there was a time when they would probably not even work in government organizations. So that's the obvious position. But like my co-discussant has mentioned, there are literatures and there are videos that have indicated structures within the group that suggested perhaps some aspects of military training. Then there are also indications that there is a close link between the group and the Iranian government. Then there is also the very likelihood that at some point perhaps the group may have attempted to sabotage certain actions of government at the state level and probably at the federal level. Now all those are latent positions that would require more intelligence gathering by government to prove. But the bottom line is the group has failed to comply with laws of the country in certain circumstances, and that this is what is leading to where we are. A good example is the situation we are currently. I've had analysts discussing that the kind of energy the group has concentrated in the protest. Because let's remember, these protests have been going on for about 1 year, 9 months. If I remember well, it started in February 2018, where today in July 2019, those protests are still going. So some good analysts have mentioned that if they had focused the kind of resources and energy in that protest, in pursuing the legal process, that perhaps we will not be where we are. Then the second element of this, life is sacrosanct. And their members are dying. Their women are on the street with kids. Why subject them to that kind of suffering? Why wouldn't you redirect that energy to pursuing legal means that are recognized by the Constitution? Now, a counter-argument would be, yes, we're in court, and they have a recognized legal luminary in the person of Femi Falana that is representing them. Now, that's an aspect. But why wouldn't you focus your energy in pursuing the legal means so that you whatever your requests in, instead of the kind of circumstances? So those are the kind of arguments that are out there. What is obvious that I've mentioned, and then what they will tell you when you speak with them, their leadership, that no, we recognize the authority of the state, no, we do not challenge the authority of the state, and all that. But on the other hand, you see the kind of actions that you see.
That's one point you have. One point that you have raised is that at least I have walked into their procession or driven into their procession once or twice. You see the men in front, you see women, and then children behind. Then you begin to wonder, why do you put women and children in such circumstances?
Well, that's right. AIG Felix Obuadwe again. In terms of maintenance of law and order, it must be puzzling. I mean, for a group to have this frequent surge, as it were, of protest, a matter is in court, and then it looks like pressure is on for, if you like, extrajudicial means to achieve their objective. It must be a peculiar challenge dealing with this kind of situation, considering now the level of escalation that we have seen this week.
Let me start by saying that the leader of the Shiite group has been granted bail, and that bail has not been set aside. Even if there is another suit filed, an appeal filed somewhere, not to my knowledge, because these two courts they're talking about, I think they have concurrent jurisdiction. So that order granting bail ought to have been complied with by now. And that is the root cause of all of this crisis. If the court, we are talking about rule of law in a democracy. So if the court says that person should release on bail, you have absolutely no reason not to comply. That is the essence of democracy and the essence of rule of law. Now, the other issue of, if you want to go on, people have rights to move freely, demonstrate, but you must be very, very lawful, you must be peaceful. You must not also disrupt or interfere with the rights of other Nigerians, other citizens. The essence of even informing the police that you want to go on a protest is for the police to protect you, so that if there is any other group that is not in tandem with what you are protesting about, you'll be protected against those guys because you run the risk of being attacked. If, for instance, Group A is saying, we want this here, Group B says, no, you can't have it there, there'll be confrontation. But if you have the police with you, then all of that will be minimized to a very large extent, if not eliminated outright. But the biggest problem, challenge we're having is, from our perception, the level of indoctrination. I was so amazed to see women with children within the ages of 1 year old, 2 years, 3 years. They are carrying their babies and part of this protest. So what is the level of indoctrination? Who is telling them all of this? So we really need to change their orientation. Like my colleague Riley said that time, if there is a way of reaching out to them, to educate them, to enlighten them, and to also tell, look, if you have any problem, if you have any complaint, follow the due process. Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, is one of the foremost lawyers in this country, and is well representing them. If they have any issues, he's very competent, capable to pursue whatever their legal requirements, up to even the Supreme Court, if it so requires. But to resort to violence, you can imagine the level of destruction that took place the day before yesterday. Nema infrastructure razed to the ground. I was listening to the DG on TV and he was regretting, he was complaining. He said, look, those vehicles, the entire outfit there cost a lot of millions of naira and it's all gone. It's all gone. And at least when they come out in thousands. There are so many. To the extent that the number, the way they come, even almost virtually overwhelms security outfits, agents.
But that's an issue because I always ask myself, or some people say, how is it that they come out in that number?
Large numbers, yes.
Yes, and there is no information prior to that time or even at that time where they are. Because when you see them, we're not talking about 100 people or 200 people.
Yes.
We're talking, so how come that as they begin to come together from across to wherever they want to protest, that there's no information at all? And one issue is, it does appear that whenever they go on these protests, they seem to be clashing with security agencies. What is responsible for that factor?
Well, let me tell you, I must admit that there's some measure of intelligence gathering failure. You can imagine that number that appeared within the Federal Secretariat environment. Then, the other time before that, the number that also went to the National Assembly complex. Before all of these people come together, I mean, the security agents ought to have known. Like rightly observed, we're not talking about 100 people, we're not talking 200. We're talking thousands, they're all over the place. So how come that they come into the Federal Capital Territory, for instance, and nobody gets to know? As we're talking now, I'm very certain that they are still around in the Federal Capital Territory. And don't be surprised, they could strike again. And very shortly too.
Let me just make a little clarification. I think knowledge on their activities is known. There was intelligence, I'm almost certain of that, that they were going to, like I said, they've been protesting since February 2018. So there are two scenarios. Some of them are here within Abuja. I mean, I could be a Shia follower. It's not written on my forehead. There is nothing, except sometimes when they come out and they wear their bandanas, the blue, red, or black bandanas, and then sometimes the dressing. But there is nothing that will tell you this is a Shia follower, or Sunni, or Christian. There is nothing. Now, that's one point. I've been in instances in Friday mosques where we finish praying, and then in seconds, you would see about 100 youths gathered, and they start shouting. You had prayed side by side with them. You didn't know they were Shia advocates, or rather in Islamic movement in Nigeria members, and then they would start protesting like that. So there is a challenge there, and I want to underline the word. It's an ideological movement. Dealing with an ideology is quite difficult. Violence, frankly, has a limit in addressing ideology. In most instances, you don't even advocate violence in addressing an ideology. Now, we have underpinned what the issue is. It's about the detention of their leader. So my question, or rather the discussion, if I'm going to have that with whoever is holding the leader, is what is the exit strategy in this regard? Is the exit strategy to keep him forever, or is the exit strategy to allow the court proceedings to deal? If it's the court proceeding, we've agreed earlier on that there was a court order for him to be released at the federal level. Now, if for any reason there is a court proceeding at the state level, why didn't the federal government respect that? I know there have been statements by different representatives of the executive arm of government.
There was a statement yesterday. I'm trying to see if I can get that on why that court order has not been.
No, that was Femi Adesina who was speaking on the program. General Jibrin would like to come in here.
What I read in some documents, he was the other Justice Kolawole of the Federal High Court was the one that authorized his bail. But that was before he was charged with culpable homicide for killing a soldier during the uprising and for other things. So, as has been highlighted, is the two courts are of coordinate jurisdiction. I'm not a lawyer, but
you have used the right phrase.
Yes. But I understand that culpable homicide is not a bailable offense at all. It is. And I'm coming. it's not a bailable offense except on extreme circumstances of health condition, and which I think the lawyer of El Zazak is pursuing now. Since now they have gone to court seeking for the release of El Zazak to go and attend to his medical issues. And the case is coming up on 29th of July. So with that in mind, I think they should calm down and wait for the outcome of that one. And because the order was given for the bail, and then he was now charged with this thing. And whether it's available or not available offense, since that time in 1980, no court has issued another bail order. This court that is sitting now in Kaduna, because Kaduna State has taken over, this is happening in our state, and we have laws and regulations guiding how we interact with each other. And that was why they placed that charge on him. And since the charge was placed on him, no court has issued another bail.
Well, gentlemen, the matter, as we all know, is fairly complicated. But let's again, in terms of linking it up with national security, say, look, before 2015, that's to say the clash between the Islamic movement and the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff, there apparently were no reports of the activities of the IMN, that's the Islamic movement, in and around the Federal Capital Territory.
Actually.
Now, there's a spillover, as it were, from Kaduna State into the Federal Capital Territory on account of what happened and the trial that is ongoing and the various legal issues arising. If you recall, I'm not quite sure of the exact date now, there was a clash. That was one of the first indications of the violent clash around Zuba. There was a military convoy. Yes. They said it was supposed to be conveying munitions and other things, and other hardware. Yes. And they were being attacked, by some of the members of this group. Absolutely. And then they repelled them, and then, of course, fortified themselves. Absolutely. Thereafter, we have seen their incursion into the heart of the Federal Capital Territory. The worst-case scenario, if there's no pushback, as it were, or containment, what are we likely to be faced with?
We have to state this fact. They cannot operate in Kaduna because, as has been highlighted by Kabiru, they have been proscribed. Immediately they gather, they will go and be arrested because they are not recognized as an entity any longer. So that is why you see the only option they have is to come to Abuja. And the impression a lot of people have is that it's federal government that is holding him or is the president that is holding him. That is why some people are calling on the president to release him. And if you know our president, he hardly interferes in this type of situation because a competent governor is sitting in Kaduna State and on the basis of their laws of the land, they have detained this person. And since that period, no any court issue any bail order for him. So that's why it is difficult to understand what is going on, like you rightly mentioned. They cannot operate in Kaduna because they are proscribed. They have to come here.
Let me say something. Let me correct some impression here. One, like I was talking about, field of intelligence here. Before that large number of Shiite members will assemble and report to the Federal Security Environment. That was the issue I was raising. Nobody, no security agency saw people just coming. That would have been able to raise some suspicion. That is the failure I'm talking about. One person, two person, going to hundreds, then up to thousands, and you say, and all of a sudden they spring surprise on you. That's what I'm talking about. Secondly, that they are proscribed in Kaduna does not mean they cannot even still operate there legally like they're doing here. These guys have no regards for their lives. You recall that some of them who said 2,000 of us, or thousands of us, are prepared to lay down our lives until our leader is released. That means they could go to anywhere in their thousands. The security men, how many weapons do they have? How many rounds of ammunition do they have? When you finish firing, you still have more people. The next they will pounce on you. They have no regards for their lives. So even in Kaduna, it's because, like General Riley said, the impression they have is that the directive for this, their leader, not to release on bail, came from Abuja here.
Well,
That's why the intensity of the listen here.
AIG,
Okay, yes.
lawyer, I'm just wondering, look, homicide is a state offense. It's not a federal offense.
Yes.
So is ex-Zakzaki being tried for a federal offense or being tried for a state offense?
No, it's a state offense.
So,
like Randy said.
and Kabir, you said, in terms of your insights, that some members of the IMN are educated and very well exposed. So why is that distinction not clear to them that, look, this is a state offense. In criminal law, it is a state that charges you, not the federal government that is charging you for this offense. And even if the federal government, assuming the Attorney General or the DPP of the Federation is the one who is prosecuting you, the Constitution is also clear, assuming they don't even recognize the Constitution, that the Attorney General doesn't take instructions, according to the Constitution, from the President on who to prosecute or who to do, whose prosecution to discontinue.
Kingsley,
Sorry,
if you are...
let me chip in this. Yes. Even though the top hierarchy might be educated, like it's alluding to, the foot soldiers are stark illiterates. That I'm very sure of. The foot soldiers you see roaming the streets here in Abuja, they're stark illiterates, good number of them. I've seen a few of them that were arrested. They can't even, most of them can't speak English. They can't read, they can't write. So if somebody is highly educated and you are deploying the stark illiterates, the kind of scenario that plays out in politics, politicians that are educated, their children are school overseas, they go to exploit the children of the poor to go and be causing mayhem here and there. But their children are secured out there. Is that right? It's the same scenario playing out. So if up there they're educated, they should do the needful, like Kingsley right observed.
They are very educated. I know of professors. I know of even possible cabinet ministers that are members of
we don't have a cabinet now.
Okay, former cabinet ministers that are members of the association. So they are very educated. Let's not. And I want to emphasize this point. The Islamic movement in Nigeria is one of the most organized organizations that we have in the country. The correct name for them is Islamic movement in Nigeria, which presupposes the fact that there are several other Islamic movements across the world, and they are very connected. So the pressure, as far as diplomatic and international pressure, is a tool that they've used in the past and that they can use. And it is this point I want to emphasize. Imagine a chess game. What the first pieces that you usually move are the pawns. So what we're seeing in Abuja is the movement of those pawns. And what is their objective? To create international attention. What happened on last 2 weeks and on Tuesday, if I'm right, on Monday, is in their interest. The international community recorded that, and a few weeks down the road, Amnesty International will come with a report damning our security agencies for our inability to manage crowds and for heavy-handedness in approaching such crowd protest. So if, on their side, they're happy, even though they've lost life, but what have they achieved? Attention. We're here discussing them. Several media houses, both locally and internationally, are discussing the issue. So they have something, they've ticked something as far as the chess game is concerned. Now, on the part of government, what have we seen? And for me, this is my worry. That incident happened. On social media, it went viral. Videos, recordings of some things that, frankly, should not have happened are there. Whether they are true or not, nobody knows at that time. A senior police officer lost his life. NEMA assets were burned. Core member, a journalist, lost his life under circumstances that are unclear. At this stage, an investigative committee of whatever type should have gone out, and then let's ask ourselves, the rules of engagement, were they followed? If they were followed, how come people lost their lives? Protests are ongoing in Taiwan at the moment, and we're not seeing that type of thing in several parts of the world. So for me, this is the thing. I would say let's do damage control.
Well, Kabir, thanks. Doing damage control and also talking about the level of violence that we saw, look, the families of those who lost their lives, they are in mourning at the moment. Yes. And we continue to sympathize with them. The Deputy Commissioner of Police went out on his lawful duty, and, the next thing he ended up in the morgue. the journalist who was on his beat ended up in the morgue as well. Some persons have also raised this question that, the protest was peaceful. It was the security agencies who responded in a heavy-handed manner. You talked about, Kabir, you talked about getting into an investigation. Could the security agencies, just asking a question, could the security agencies have set ablaze the utility vehicles of NEMA that are stationed near the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
Like I said, this is a chess game, unfortunately. A dangerous chess game that is costing life, but that's what the Islamic movement in Nigeria is doing. We're aware they've gone to the UN headquarters. They've attempted to go to the US Embassy. They have gone to the British High Commission. They've gone, in fact, they targeted an international conference taking place in Transcorp and spiked their protest during that period. So it's clear what they want to achieve, attention. And are they succeeding? The answer is yes. So these issues that you've mentioned, it's very difficult for any of us here to sit and say, this is what happened. Whenever there is a protest like that, and remember this thing has been ongoing for about how many months now? It started February 2018. We're in July 2019. So for quite a long while.
A year and a half.
And just yesterday, I was at the presentation of a report that identified that indicators for protestation in Nigeria is one of the highest in Africa. What am I trying to point? There are several reasons why fifth columnists or other elements could infiltrate this protest and cause the kind of scenarios. Now, the possibilities are one. Islamic movement in Nigeria may have done that. Blue on blue could have happened. That's a possibility. Thought elements that wanted to take advantage of this possibility to create what happened. So there are several circumstances. It's only an investigation, a fair one, that would point with facts that would say this is what happened. And then whoever is guilty will now be penalized.
Okay, let's get, because you quickly asked the question now, could security agencies have set NEMA's equipment ablaze?
Definitely not. Let me correct an impression. They came in armed. The DC was shot dead, went before them. I was appealing to them to calm down and follow due process. That is where he was shot. Somebody told me yesterday that they were all protesting and shouting and making all the noise. They said, when next we come around, we are going to carry more arms. So they came in armed. And I even threatened that when next they come, they will carry more arms. Like his letter observed, they set those NEMA things.
I wasn't a witness. I'm just raising.
I will tell you their side of
the
story.
Let me tell you. Yes. It is not the police, not security agents that set these things on fire.
They
have absolutely no reason to do that. It is the Shiite guys that set those things on fire. And they actually had jerrycans of fuel. They wanted to set the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on fire too. It was the intervention of the security agents that saved the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Well,
quote me.
This raises, General Jibril, this raises the stakes in terms of security operations. Yeah. But at the same time, Kabir has talked about the need for engagement. There are back channels for engagement and otherwise. From your perspective, your experience in military intelligence and national security issues, what is required to be done at this time? Because if there's an embedment already of these members, and some of them have a disposition towards the kind of things that we saw on Monday, the scales probably will be much higher now.
Yes. I think the issue is very simple and straightforward as it is right now. The case is in court. A hearing has been fixed on a definite date, 29th of July. I don't think it is at this stage that the government will engage them in any dialogue or any form of discussion. No. I think maybe it is after the court judgment. If it is not favorable to them, I know that the stakes will be higher because definitely they are not going to take it lying low. They are going to come up with new dimension of their expression in various ways. So I think it is at that stage that possibly we will be talking in terms of engaging them. But at this stage, I pray they are not even proscribed at national level as an organization, because that is also likely to be on the table. If the federal government follows suit what Kaduna State did and prescribe them as an organization, this is another thing that can happen. But it's possible maybe after the judgment, the way, if they is favorable to them, I don't think they will witness more of these confrontations. But if it is not, yes.
Are we can always play this back. Let's return to the chess analogy. Is it that Nigeria is likely to be sucked into a proxy war of powers in the Middle East if this is not properly handled?
We already are, unfortunately. We already are. It's at the low level now, because like I said at the beginning, there are two major divisions in Islam. Sunni, which has its spiritual headquarters in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and then Shiites, which has its spiritual headquarters in Iran. Now, in their open attestations, the Islamic movement in Nigeria will tell you they are not closely associated with the Republic, with Iran. But in the latent disposition, there are indications that they are openly associated with Iran. The two divisions, Sunnis and have these close associations with either side. And each, for political influence, each side would like to grow its membership. Now, the argument by Islamic movement in Nigeria is that the reason why they are being persecuted, because remember, that's their allegation, that they are being persecuted is because their membership is growing and that the Sunni group is uncomfortable about that membership. So already that interplay is there. Now, one thing that you've emphasized in when giving the background to your question is the radicalization that is taking place. And my worry about that radicalization is that even if the parent body, Islamic movement in Nigeria, is not radicalized, there is a high likelihood, and I emphasize this word, of the emergence of an offshoot that is radicalized. Now, has that already happened? The possibility is extremely high, given what we have seen in the last few weeks, especially when the incident at the National Assembly. One side of the Islamic movement in Nigeria is saying that, no, we didn't go to the National Assembly with an intention to be violent. However, we've seen videos. I've seen an instance where a young man was on top of a vehicle trying to break the windscreen of the vehicle. And I've seen inscription of Free El-Zazaki on vehicles that have been touched. So while the leadership is maintaining that stand, there is the high possibility that already an offshoot of young radicalized youths are already taking that kind of action. The scenario that my co-discussant have mentioned of an attempt to touch the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is very possible that it's an offshoot of that group. So bottom line, we've emphasized that point, intelligence needs to be strengthened by the various agencies in charge of intelligence.
How do you utilize that part of the intelligence, that intelligence in action, AIG Felix Obuado? Because assuming the proxy scenario plays out, that Nigeria is now the theater of a proxy war of some powers in the Middle East, what is the risk that Nigeria faces further in terms of rogue elements pouring in from elsewhere around the world in support of either of the groups?
Well, we really need to re-examine these are current challenges. The negative influences we are getting from some of these countries, Iran or Iraq, whatever it is, they're not helping us at all. That's why I've always said how I wish the leadership could copy the way Islam is practiced in the Southwest. Because violence does not pay. These people must be made to realize and appreciate the fact that violence does not pay. Violence, no development, nothing. Like I said, most of these foot soldiers are stark illiterates. The wrong indoctrination, they are being radicalized and all of that, it doesn't take them anywhere. Look at all the destruction and the retrogressiveness in all these countries we just talked about now. It's all crisis upon crisis, crisis upon crisis, crisis upon crisis. So we should learn from all those places. We should not allow borders to, just allow these guys to come in here and be creating problems for us. The porosity of our border is one of the problems too. People just come in here, the next will say they're in this, they're that. Many, many years back, I recall my days in Abuja 1972 to 75. We didn't have issues like this at all. Muslims were one indivisible family that abhorred violence. All of a sudden, this factionalization, this one defecting and all of that, started coming into Nigeria with wrong and negative influences coming from on these undeveloped countries. When you're talking about development, we focus towards countries like America, UK, Germany, France, and all of these places. But when you're looking towards Iraq, Iran, all these areas, you're not thinking of development. But if you think it's just religion, and with that myopic perception, it's what we are facing now that we continue to battle with. But again, let me conclude by saying that if we must overcome this situation, that court order must be obeyed. Because if that court had been obeyed long time ago, all of this wouldn't have happened. And to keep on delaying it, like I told you, these guys are still putting their acts together to come and strike again. After what he did, the Federal Secretary, they went to Banex Plaza. The act is there. They are going to come back again unless something happens. We have to comply with that court order. It has not been set aside, like I said. It has not been set aside. Nobody went to the Court of Appeal to say no.
Yeah, but you make the point. You make the point
that they were appealing it, that it's being appealed. That's part of the reason. That is it. He said, yeah, Femi Additional said so yesterday, that judgment is being appealed, and that's the reason why.
That is belatedly.
And frankly, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, there is nobody that you speak to that will confirm that there is an appeal in any court.
Yes.
As far as we know.
Yes.
So my point is that I'm trying to bring out is there is a lot of misgivings, and the government needs to come out and speak a bit more clearly to Nigerians. Present evidence, for instance, that there is an appeal. Show this man that his health is not failing, like the group is saying, and things like that, so that at least all of these agitations will reduce currently. I also want to...
There are two issues I'd like us to speak to in the course of this discussion. And first of all, one would be the issue that you raised, that, the possibility, like you said, it's a chess game, and denial by the leaders of this group that their foot soldiers are not perpetrating violence is also part of the game. And that, in all of this, after all of this, the possibility that there could be an offshoot from this is something that we should look into. But then another issue is the public in all of this. Where do we come in? From what I know I did a research not too long ago. Abuja is, after Enugu, the safest city to live in Nigeria. But as we speak today, in the last couple, yes, it ranks number 1 after Enugu. Enugu is number 2. And in the last couple of days, when you want to go out, there's this thought in your head, where do I go to? How do I go about my movement today? People are feeling insecure. If you see some of the footages that have come out, just the one that happened in Banex yesterday, people running helter-skelter. Yes. Where does the public come in all of this?
Well, it's like we said, security is everybody's responsibility. Like you used to say on NTA here, that when you see something, say something. And I've also added, when you also hear something, also say something. Like I said, all these massive movements, Nigerians see them, people moving around. Part of one of that advert too, these criminals that are terrorizing us, they live amongst us. So whatever we see, we must give information, credible information. Intelligence gathering is very key. Inform the security agencies. I always talk about what happens in some of these francophone countries that border Nigeria. If a stranger goes into any community there, the villagers, the indigenous, they will go and tell the traditional, say, look, this guy, we've never seen him here before. We don't know why he's here. And they go and reach out to that guy. And question about here, nobody cares. The issue of security is just abandoned in totality to the security agencies, and that's not right. Security agencies cannot do it alone. Look at the number of losses They've been suffering, security agencies. A colonel and some other officers were killed in Borno State. Thank God the governor of Rivers State, where the guy comes from, set up a fund to take care of the wife and the children. Now, 2 days ago, a deputy commissioner of police, who went to be appealing to them to be peaceful, to eschew violence, all of that, was shot and he has died. So we need to put our acts together. We must all put our hands on board and work together, synergize, exchange information, because in the absence of that, it's going to be difficult for the security agencies. They can't do it all alone. So whatever we see, report it. Whatever you hear, report it.
Let's
pass on the information.
AIG Felix Obuadu, thank you very much. We just need to restate this because we've already discussed it in the course of the program. I actually said that look, what is playing out is that El Zakzaky is not under trial for federal offenses.
Yes.
You already acknowledged that.
Yes.
That is a state offense without destruction of public order or culpable homicide. And the federal government is not responsible for what is happening to him. The question that then was then also addressed as you as guests was, look, why is it that the members are not sufficiently being educated as to the fact that it is not President Muhammadu Buhari who is holding El Zakzaky. It's a court process, and that flows from the state. Of course, Kabir did respond to say that, look, this is an attention-seeking device by the IMN, to say, look, we want to, get more attention locally and internationally. There's another aspect we'll come to. If you are magnetizing attention, again, what implication would that have for our national security? We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
The red light won't kill you. Move now. To the disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say, I no go dey do am again. Because change begins with me.
Cross the other side of the road.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge. Because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me past where they go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
All right, welcome back, and I say good morning, Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our three guests with us, and just before we went on the short break, we were talking about the linkages in terms of misconception of the nature of the trial of El Zakzaky and while he's still in custody and while his people are protesting. But I would like to return first with General Jibrin. With national security and the fact that perhaps this might then become, as it were at the moment, a low-scale proxy war that Nigeria is witnessing. Some analysts will draw attention to the following, that you have virtually merchants of war who are seeking for where they can operate. We used to hear of the Taliban. They morphed into Al-Qaeda and they morphed into ISIS. And we have seen what has played out in Iraq, the clashes between the Shiites and the Sunnis. And ISIS, of course, also now has a West Africa branch with Boko Haram. What can be done to stave off the graduation, if you like, of merchants of war, seizing the opportunity of what is being created now by IMN and supporters in order to escalate the crisis or de-escalate the crisis, as it were?
I would say adherence to rule of law. Since we say the case is in the court, And it is not time now for government to engage any dialogue or take any measure, since the court hearing is within days. So it is only after the judgment is passed, then the government can now take a look at it and see its implication on national security. And that is when the government can now take action. And if we live to survive that period, that is when we will be able to analyze, because we don't know what is going to come out. Whether the court will grant the bail for him to go for his medical treatment or it will not. Because it is that result that will determine exactly what will happen. And the issue of the proxy war, I know that Iran has a lot at hand presently if we are watching the international scenario. I don't think what is happening in Nigeria now will be one of its major issues that it will look and then start creating some diplomatic or other problems with Nigeria. Obviously, the attention-seeking activities they are doing is yielding results for them. But there is a limit to which the international community will determine how a government will operate its laws. So we have our laws. Whatever pressure that will come from the international community, the government will look at it with a view to implementing its laws, not doing the bidding of the international community.
All right, very quickly, let's take our tweets. We're getting responses, we're getting contributions and suggestions via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. And you can also still send in your tweet and be a part of the conversation. The first one is from Mogbola Mbabs. It says, national security supersedes any other interest. However, the federal government must circumspect in addressing the issue of these elements before it snowballs into another seeming intractable menace. Abuja residents now live in palpable fear where we go or how we don't go. Here, he said, when the innocents are affected. For me, I think there's more to the boldness of this group beyond the ordinary. Barely 48 hours ago, some Iranians went to protest at the Nigerian embassy in the United Kingdom. That tells us that there's more to their rebel rousing than meets the eye. Let's federal government be swift in action.
Now, this is coming from Ogo. It says, a religious group is bound to respect the laws of the land. I don't see the reason why this Shiite group took the laws into their own hands. The Nigerian government has the full right to ban their activities for now.
And this one is from Apostle Stanley. It says government should intensify efforts to orient the citizens on the importance of education, especially in the northern parts of the country. Parts of informed citizens can never cause a problem. Okay, when citizens are informed, it can never cause a problem for the country.
Law Alpha C. Government should, as a matter of urgent importance, enter into dialogue with the members of the organization to find a peaceful way to address their agitations, thereby restoring sanity.
Mike Kaniaku tweeted, said the activities of the Shiites in recent times are despicable and irresponsible. It is condemnable and actions taken too far. Our extant laws do not authorize anyone or group to take laws into their hands. Federal government on its part should prosecute the leader of the group in the law courts if they are proven charges against him.
Habila Kwara Zakchi, let's clarify that again from Mike Anyankwa. So the federal government should, on the spot, prosecute the leader of the group. That is, if there are federal offenses that he has committed, but it's already been tried for state offenses. And that's the prosecution being undertaken by the Kaduna State government. Now, this next tweet is coming from Habila Kwara Zakshi. If not properly handled, we may just be having another breed of deadly organization. If releasing their leader is actually what they are protesting for, I think that should be done. He can be out of prison and still be prosecuted. His followers are going wild, and government should be careful.
Joseph Francis Obi said government always says it strongly believes on the rule of law. They should find a way to handle these or it will escalate beyond control.
This is from Joseph, again, the first one that was from Francis Obi. We are in the era of religious enslavement. People have been blindfolded with religion. The judiciary should speed up the trial to let them know their fate.
Lily Jack Solomon says no reason, no person or groups that is above, there is no person or group that is above the law of the land, no one. However, to end the Shiite program, the government should implement the recommendation of the Judicial Commission that earlier looked into the issue. The Shiite must be handled meticulously to avoid the rise of insurgents. It's well known that Nigeria is presently battling Boko Haram terrorists who sadly have foreign components that are yet to be diffused till date. It's unacceptable to add another terrorist organization to the list of foreign-sponsored criminality that citizens now have to endure. But just as Kingsley said earlier, or we have tried to make very clear on the program, it is not a case between the federal government or President Muhammadu Buhari. It is a case between the Shiites and the Kaduna state government.
And Pascal Isile has this tweet. Now, if the courts have granted bail to their leader, then he should be allowed to go home after meeting the bail conditions. The Shiites issue is not supposed to be a national matter, and taking the kind of attention that it is now getting. The president should please help.
And this one is from Festus Akimboyo. He says that the Shiites have denounced Nigeria's government and pledged allegiance to an Nigerian government is what makes them so threatening. Their lawyers have the responsibility of asking them to stop their protest and violent exchanges with police since the matter is in court.
Senate Michael Amakoje says no right-thinking Nigerian will support any group or religion threatening the peace of this country. However, we should also be human to address the fundamental issues why the people are protesting. We learned that some time ago that their ruler was granted bail but denied release.
The Shiites must respect the Nigerian constitution, and why are they keeping silent when the two El Zazzaki sons were shot dead years ago and now continued protesting because the president is from the north and a Muslim too? This one is from Alhaji Musa Muhammad Adeja.
This is coming from MK Ibrahim. The ongoing clashes between the Nigerian security and Islamic movement in Nigeria are wittingly or unwittingly a reflection of Nigeria being dragged into a proxy war.
All right, those are the tweets that we have for now. Remember, you can continue to send in your thoughts and your comments via Twitter handle at NTAGNmen. Gentlemen,
Rhoda, General Jibrin has talked about the rule of law. There's some point that also needs to be addressed in terms of management of public order and peace. Is there, these are questions for the security agencies to obviously address, but these are our security experts who are our guests. Government follows the rule of law and say, look, we are on trial, you've been granted bail, go on bail. Can the group guarantee that they will remain law-abiding?
And then another question is, for some persons, it is that, okay, if he's granted bail, could it be as a result of the pressure that they have mounted?
There are some people who are even saying that all this renewed agitation and violence is because they know the case is coming for hearing in few days' time. So they are trying to tell the public and tell the world that we are going to do worse than this if the trial fails to grant him the bail he requires to go and attend to it. There are some people who are thinking like that.
That would be the intimidation of the judiciary.
Yes, that is actually a perception some people are having, that don't worry. This renewed violence and agitation is just a way to put pressure on government, to prod the government to say, look, if the court does not grant this, we will hold the government responsible and we are going to do worse than this. So the thing is very straightforward as far as I'm concerned. If the court in Kaduna, the Kaduna High Court in Kaduna, if it grants bail and the governor refuses to abide by the court order, then it becomes another issue. So I think we have to wait until the hearing comes, and then whatever the court orders is heard, then we'll now wait to see. But I believe sincerely that if the court orders his bail or release to go for medical attention, Kaduna State government will oblige, because they would have nothing to tell the world again. Now we are still talking about the fact that it's because a case of culpable homicide, he was charged with it. That is why they did not allow him to go. And apart from since that 2016 pronouncement, there is nothing that has been said by any court again concerning his bail. So I believe if the bail is granted, Kaduna State government will allow him to go for his medical attention. And it will be good for government to allow that to happen so that the group is not, we don't fall into the hands of the group.
AIG. Yeah. A guarantee of orderly conduct by the members. That's in the event that their leader is released on bail.
Well, I want to believe that all these protests is aimed at ensuring that the court order granting bail is complied with. And like I said, if that order had been complied with a long time ago, all of this wouldn't have happened. So I want to believe very strongly that if he's released on bail, a lot of this tension will be doused. But that is not to say that at the end of the day, in the course of the trial, if he's eventually convicted, maybe there'll be another, that'll be the next level of the protestations and all of that.
Question I was going to ask
Yes.
Kabiru Adamu now. So if it's not released, or if it's released, the Kaduna State government decides to appeal it, what happens?
An unfortunate continuation of the kind of circumstances that we're seeing, and perhaps even an escalation. I've mentioned that it's very likely that there's an offshoot, so perhaps that offshoot will become more radicalized, and then, we would see a continuation of this. Government has several tools at its disposal, including, like we've discussed, the proscription of the group, but we have to be very careful there. Like I said, it's an ideology. The group has successfully, I underline this word, intertwined the ideology and its formation. So when you're talking of Islamic movement in Nigeria, it's very difficult to remove IMN, Islamic movement in Nigeria, from Shiite. They've succeeded in doing that. So I think going forward in conversations, the government needs to separate Islamic movement in Nigeria from Shiite. And if put forward the peaceful and law-abiding Shiite movement that we have in Nigeria. Let Nigerians know that there are other Shiite groups that are law-abiding and peaceful. This one that has decided to adopt practices that are not in congruence with our law, unfortunately, shouldn't go. The second element that I want to emphasize is our criminal justice system. There have been weaknesses that needs to be improved. The protests that happened yesterday, members of that group have been arrested. The police needs to come forward, put them, let their trial be seen by the world in a very fair manner.
All right, so thank you.
Rhoda, I think it's important for our viewers to get the benefit of this again. Both General Jibrin and Kabir clarified that, of course, you also see that on our caption on the screen when we say Shiites, that there are sects within the Shiite group, and that those who are said to be protesting now belong to the Islamic movement in Nigeria. And as General Ibrahim also indicated earlier in the course of the program, you have a Shiite group in Kaduna that is quiescent but effective, with
and that's what Kabiru is even saying, that even within the Islamic movement of Nigeria, that there are different
it appears to be
different
that possibility
Shiite groups, and other ones are peaceful.
That's right.
All right, and law-abiding. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the program this morning. We have been actually looking at, of course, the Shiite movement and security, national security. This time, I want to say a very big thank you to our guests who've joined us on the program, retired AIG Felix Ugbaudu. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure, thanks.
All right, a very big thank you also to Major General Ahmed Tijani Jibri, he's a former director of the Military Intelligence, TMI. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And of course, Kabiru Adamu, it's always our delight, sir, to have you on the program. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time.
Thank you for having me.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Let's join our sports desk for some sports updates.